The stars burned cold against the black canvas of space as Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. His hands rested behind his back, fingers interlaced in a gesture that had become habit over 20 years of military service. Through the massive viewport before him, he watched the distant flashes of light that marked where ships died by the thousands. The year was 2847, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 15 years. 15 years of careful diplomacy, of proving themselves worthy, being treated like children who had just learned to walk among giants. The Council consisted of 12 advanced alien civilizations, each with technology that made Earth's achievements look primitive. They had faster ships, stronger shields, weapons that bent the laws of physics. And they never let humanity forget it. Commander Nari approached from the tactical station. Her dark eyes reflected the glow of the console screens. She carried a data tablet in her hands, and Heian could see the tension in her shoulders. They had served together for 8 years, and he knew her tells. "Captain, the casualty reports are coming in," she said quietly. "The Council has lost 40% of their fleet in 3 days. The Valak swarm is adapting to every strategy they throw at it." Hugh nodded slowly. The Valaks were unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced before. They were a hive mind. Billions of organisms connected through some kind of biological network that humanity still did not fully understand. Their ships were grown, not built. Living creatures that could regenerate damage, adapt their defenses, and coordinate with perfect precision. They consumed entire star systems, stripping planets bare before moving to the next meal. "What are our orders?" Hune asked, though he already knew the answer. "Maintain position at grid, reference 77 Alpha. Observe and protect human interests. Do not engage unless directly threatened." Ray's voice carried a hint of frustration. "We're supposed to watch, Captain. That's all." On the main view screen, another explosion bloomed silently in the void. A Council flagship, one of the massive vessels that dwarfed the Indomitable, broke apart under concentrated Valak's fire. Hune watched escape pods scatter like seeds in the wind. Some would make it to rescue ships. Most would not. Lieutenant Jawan appeared at the captain's side. The young pilot was barely 30, but he had the reflexes of someone born for space combat. His hands fidgeted with the edge of his flight jacket, a nervous habit that surfaced when he wanted to speak but was unsure if he should. "Sir, my squadron is ready," Jawan said. "We could help. The Ghost Fighters are faster than anything the Council has. We could run interference, buy them time to regroup." "Stand down," Lieutenant Heian said, but his voice was gentle. "Those aren't our orders." "With respect, Captain, those orders are going to get a lot of people killed." Hune turned to look at the young pilot. Juwan's jaw was set, his eyes bright with the kind of idealism that combat had not yet beaten out of him. Hune remembered being that young once, believing that courage and good intentions could change the galaxy. Time had taught him harder lessons. "Turn to your station," Heian said. "For now?" As Giwan left, Engineer Tay's voice crackled over the internal comm. "Captain, I need you to see something in engineering." "It's important." Hune exchanged a glance with Nari, then made his way through the corridors of the ship. The Indomitable was Earth's newest warship, but compared to the Council's vessels, it was modest. Only 800 meters long, with a crew of 3,000. Its weapons were conventional by galactic standards. Kinetic railguns, missile pods, nuclear warheads. The Council had laughed at the design specifications when Earth first presented them. Energy weapons were the standard. Plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter torpedoes. Why would anyone use solid projectiles when you could unmake matter itself? Tay waited in the main engineering bay, surrounded by holographic displays showing the ship's weapon systems. The engineer was 50 years old, with gray starting to show in his hair and grease permanently staining his hands. He had worked on every Earth warship built in the last 2 decades. "Captain, I've been running simulations," Tay said without preamble. "The Valak shields are impressive, but they're designed to absorb and disperse energy. That's how they adapt so quickly. They analyze the energy signature and modify their defenses." "Get to the point, Tay," Hyon said. "Kinetic weapons, sir. Simple, stupid, solid metal moving really fast. The Valak's shields won't know what hit them because there's no energy signature to adapt to. It's just mass and velocity. Heian studied the simulations. The numbers looked good, almost too good. The council must have thought of this. They did, 100 years ago. Then they abandoned kinetic weapons as primitive. Their doctrine evolved, and they forgot the basics.
Ow.
Tay pulled up another screen. I've made some modifications to our railguns. Unauthorized modifications. If we fired at full power, we could accelerate projectiles to 10% light speed. Nothing in that battle has shields rated for that kind of impact. Unauthorized modifications that could get you court-martialed? Hyun said. Yes, sir. If we survive to make it back to Earth. Proximity alarm began to wail. Heian tapped his communicator. Bridge report. Nuri's voice came through, tight with urgency. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal. Admiral Vex's flagship is surrounded. Valak's forces are concentrating on the Council command ship. They're asking for immediate assistance. Hyun ran back to the bridge, Tay following close behind. On the view screen, the situation was clear. The Council's flagship was a massive vessel, 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons. But it was alone, cut off from the rest of the fleet by a wall of Valak's bioships. Thousands of them, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly light as they coordinated their assault. Admiral Vex is requesting permission for us to engage, Nari said. She looked at Heian, waiting. Heian opened a channel to Council Command. This is Captain Hyun of the Indomitable. Requesting permission to assist the flagship? The response came quickly, a harsh alien voice speaking through translation software. Negative, Indomitable. You are not equipped for this engagement. Maintain your position. We have reinforcements en route. Heian watched the flagship take another hit. Its shields flickered, failing in sections. There were no reinforcements close enough to help. Everyone on the bridge knew it. Captain Nari said quietly, "They're going to die." Hyun looked at his crew. At Nari, waiting for his decision. At Yuna, the young communications officer who monitored every desperate call for help. At the bridge crew, who had followed him across half the galaxy. Then he looked back at the view screen, at the alien ships dying because they had called for help that would not come. Helm Heian said, his voice carrying across the bridge. Set course for the flagship. Maximum speed. Battle stations, all hands. Indomitable turned, its engines burning bright as it accelerated toward the heart of the battlefield. The Indomitable cut through space like a knife through water. On the bridge, warning lights painted everything red as the crew rushed to their combat positions. Captain Heian stood at the center of it all, watching the distance to the flagship shrink with each passing second. Council Command is hailing us, Yuna said from her station. The young communications officer's voice was steady despite the chaos. They're ordering us to stand down. Tell them we're experiencing communication difficulties, Heian said. All channels are filled with static. Yuna hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. Her fingers moved across her console, sending the false report. It was a lie that would have consequences, but those consequences seemed distant compared to the immediate problem of watching good people die. Commander, Nari moved to stand beside Heian on her tactical display. Thousands of red dots surrounded the blue marker that represented Admiral Vex's flagship. The Valak's swarm moved with disturbing coordination, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Each ship knew exactly where the others were, what they were doing, how they would attack. It made them predictable in one sense, but also incredibly efficient. They're using a standard encirclement pattern, Nari said, pointing at the display. Concentrating fire on the shield generators first, then targeting the engines. Once the flagship can't move, they'll tear it apart section by section. Time until we're in weapons range, Hyun asked. 3 minutes at current speed. But Captain, if we engage, we'll be outnumbered 500 to 1. The Indomitable isn't built for this kind of fight. Hyun looked at her. Do you think we should turn back? Nari was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, and it was not a happy expression. No, sir. I think we should show them why it was a mistake to underestimate us. Down in the fighter bay, Lieutenant Jiwon was already strapped into his cockpit. The Ghost Fighters were humanity's answer to the Council's superiority in space combat. They were small, fast, and almost invisible to most sensor systems. 50 of them waited in the launch tubes, their pilots running through final checks. Jiwon's hands moved over the controls. A sequence he had performed 1,000 times in training and 100 times in actual combat. But this felt different. This was not a skirmish with pirates or a patrol mission. This was war against an enemy that had conquered dozens of civilizations. His communicator crackled. All pilots, this is Captain Hyun. In 30 seconds, you're going to launch into the largest enemy concentration any human has ever faced. Your mission is simple. Cause chaos. Make them think there are more of you than there really are. Draw fire away from the flagship and come back alive. That's an order. Guan grinned despite himself. Yes, sir. Ghost Leader to all wings. Remember your training. Stay fast, stay unpredictable, and don't get comfortable. Launch in 10 seconds. The countdown reached 0, and the launch tubes opened to space. 50 Ghost Fighters shot out like bullets, spreading into a loose formation that would have made any Council flight instructor scream in horror. But that was the point. Human pilots did not fly in neat formations. They were wild, creative, and impossible to predict. On the bridge, Yoon watched the fighters disperse across his tactical display. Weapons. Status report. Railguns charged and ready, Captain, came the response from the weapons officer. Nuclear missiles armed. EMP mines deployed in launch configuration. We're as ready as we're going to be. Go to target the Valak ships in sectors 4 through 7. Fire on my mark. Indomitable closed the distance to the battlefield. The Valaks were so focused on the flagship that they barely noticed the human ship approaching. Why would they? Intelligence reports said the humans were weak, their technology outdated, their ships barely worthy of attention. The Council had accepted them out of pity, not respect. That was about to change. Medical Officer Sora stood in the medical bay checking equipment one last time. Her staff moved around her with practiced efficiency, preparing for casualties. She was 35 years old and had served on 4 different ships, but the waiting before combat never got easier. She tapped her communicator. Medical bay ready, Captain. We have capacity for 200 wounded. If we need more space, we can convert cargo hold 3. Acknowledged Sora. Let's hope we don't need it. Sora closed the channel and looked at her team. They were young, most of them. Fresh from Earth, assigned to the Indomitable because it was humanity's flagship, the ship that represented them to the galaxy. They had joined to save lives, and now they might have to save them while the ship shook apart around them. Engineer Tay worked in the main engineering bay, surrounded by displays showing power, flow, and system status. He had 3 teams working simultaneously, making last-minute adjustments to the modifications he had installed over the past 6 months. Each adjustment was technically against regulations. Each one could also mean the difference between victory and death. At Tay to bridge. Captain, the railguns are running hotter than I'd like. If we fire at full power, we'll get maybe 3 salvos before we need to cool down. How long for cooling? Hyun asked. 90 seconds between salvos. And Captain, if we push it beyond 3 shots without a longer cooling period, we risk catastrophic failure. The barrels could literally melt. Understood. Make those 3 shots count. On the view screen, the flagship was failing. Its shields flickered and died in sections, exposing the bare hull to Valak's weapons fire. Explosions blossomed across its surface. Debris spun away into the void. The massive ship was dying, and everyone watching knew it. 30 seconds to weapons range, Nari announced. Hyun took a deep breath. This was the moment when everything would change. If they succeeded, humanity would prove itself to the galaxy. If they failed, Earth would lose its only warship and 3,000 crew members. The Council would use it as proof that humans were not ready for galactic warfare. All hands, this is the captain. We did not come to the stars to watch others fight. We came to stand beside them, to prove that Earth belongs among the civilizations of this galaxy. Today, we make that stand. Today we show them what humanity can do. Battle stations. Countdown reached 0. The Indomitable entered weapons range, and the Valak swarm finally noticed the human ship approaching. Thousands of bioships began to turn, their weapons charging with organic energy that pulsed like infected veins. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The flagship dying, the Valaks converging. The Indomitable, small and alone against impossible odds. And in that moment, across every military channel in the sector, communication ceased. The galaxy fell silent as humanity's warship arrived. Then the silence shattered. "Weapons free," Ian said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Fire everything." The Indomitable's hull lit up with fire as every weapon system activated simultaneously. Railguns hurled solid metal projectiles at speeds that bent physics. Missiles streaked toward their targets, leaving trails of chemical exhaust. Ghost fighters dove into the Valak's formation like sharks into a school of fish, and the battlefield, which had been a scene of organized slaughter, suddenly descended into beautiful chaos. The Valaks had never faced anything like this. Their shields, designed to absorb energy weapons, did nothing against solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. The first railgun salvo punched through 200 bioships before the Valaks even registered what had happened. Explosions rippled through their formation as ships that had been untouchable seconds before simply ceased to exist. Admiral Vex watched from his dying flagship, his alien eyes wide with disbelief. The humans had disobeyed orders. They had charged into certain death. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The Valak swarm reacted with the speed that came from a hive mind. Thousands of bioships turned toward the Indomitable, abandoning their assault on the flagship. To them, the human ship had become the primary threat, and the hive decided it must be eliminated. Energy weapons began charging across the Valak's formation. Organic tissue glowing with stored power, Captain Hion watched the enemy ships converge on his position. He had expected this. The plan depended on it. Nari. Execute pattern Delta 7. Draw them away from the flagship?
Yes, sir.
Helm, hard turn to port, full thrust. Get us away from Admiral Vex's position? The Indomitable banked sharply, its massive bulk moving with surprising grace. The Valaks followed like predators chasing wounded prey, their formation adjusting to maintain pursuit. Behind them, the flagship's crew worked frantically to restart their engines, to raise whatever shields they could. The human ship had bought them time, but only if humanity could survive the attention they had drawn. Lieutenant Juan's fighter screamed through the battle space. Weaving between Valak's ships with centimeters to spare, his hands moved across the controls without conscious thought, his mind and machine operating as one. Around him, the other ghost fighters performed their deadly dance, each pilot pushing their craft to the absolute limit.
"7, you have 3 on your tail," Juan called out.
Break left on my mark. 3, 2, 1, break. Ghost 7 banked hard, and Jiwan slid his fighter into the gap behind the pursuing Valak ships. His fingers squeezed the trigger, and kinetic rounds tore through the bioship's engines. They were not destroyed, but they were crippled, spinning away from the battle. "Thanks, Lead. I owe you a drink." "Buy me a whole bottle if we survive this," Juan replied. Then his threat warning system screamed. He pushed his fighter into a spiral that would have knocked out a normal pilot, but his training held. Energy beams cut through the space where he had been milliseconds before. On the Indomitable's bridge, Yuna monitored every communication channel. The Council fleet was in chaos, officers shouting over each other, trying to coordinate a response to the Valak swarm. But among all the noise, she caught something else. A pattern in the Valak's communications, if you could call them communications. They were not words or even sounds, but electromagnetic pulses that carried information across the hive. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Yuna said. "The Valak ships are cycling through a regeneration pattern. They take damage, pull back from the fight for exactly 43 seconds, heal themselves, then rejoin the battle. It's like clockwork." Commander Nari looked up from her tactical display. 43 seconds. That's their vulnerability window. If we could hit them while they're regenerating, before their shields come back online, they'd be defenseless, Hune finished. He opened a channel to engineering. Tay, can we modify our targeting systems to identify ships in regeneration mode? Give me 2 minutes, Captain. You have 90 seconds. Down in engineering, Tay's team moved with desperate efficiency. They rerouted sensor feeds, adjusted targeting algorithms, pushed the systems beyond their design parameters. It was chaos, controlled only by experience and skill. Warnings flashed across every display, but Tay ignored them. They would either make this work or they would die. There was no middle ground. Targeting modification complete, Tay announced. Uploading to weapons now. On the bridge, new markers appeared on the tactical display. Valak's ships that were pulled back from the battle, their hulls pulsing with the energy of regeneration. They were scattered throughout the battlefield, dozens of them at any given moment. Easy targets, if you knew where to look. Weapons? New targeting priorities, Nari said. Focus on ships in regeneration mode. Hit them while they're vulnerable. The second railgun salvo fired, and this time the results were even more devastating. The solid metal projectiles found Valak's ships at their weakest, tearing through them like paper. The Hive's perfect coordination suddenly became a weakness. Every ship followed the same regeneration pattern, making them predictable. What had been an advantage became a fatal flaw. Medical Officer Sora rushed through the medical bay as the first casualties arrived. Not human casualties, but alien ones. The Indomitable had been picking up escape pods from destroyed council ships, pulling in survivors even in the middle of combat. Sora's team worked on 3 different species simultaneously, each with different biology, different needs. But pain and trauma were universal languages. An alien officer, his blue skin marked with burns, grabbed Sora's arm. Your ship. You should have stayed away. This fight? Not yours. Someone needed to help, Sora said simply, adjusting his IV line. We just happened to be close. The alien stared at her for a moment, then nodded. Humans... strange. But brave. On the main view screen, the battle had become a storm of light and destruction. Ghost fighters danced between Valak's ships, drawing fire and attention. The Indomitable fired its third railgun salvo, and Tay's warning proved accurate. The weapons overheated immediately, warning lights flooding the bridge with urgent red. Railguns are down for cooling, the weapons officer reported. 90 seconds. Until we can fire again. Switch to missiles, Han ordered. Target clusters of regenerating ships. Maximum spread pattern. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched from the Indomitable's pods, each one accelerating toward its designated target. The Council had outlawed nuclear weapons centuries ago, considering them barbaric and inefficient. But against biological ships that healed themselves, nuclear fire was remarkably effective. The missiles detonated in carefully calculated positions. And the combined EMP and thermal radiation washed over regenerating Valak ships. Their healing stopped. Their shields failed. And conventional Council weapons suddenly found targets they could actually hurt. Admiral Vex's flagship had restored partial power. Its engines fired, pushing the massive vessel away from the worst of the combat. On his bridge, the Admiral watched the human ship fight alone against thousands of enemies. His tactical officer provided constant updates, each one more unbelievable than the last. The human ship has destroyed or disabled over 2,000 Valak's vessels, Admiral. Their tactics are unlike anything in our combat doctrine. They're using weapons we abandoned centuries ago. And those weapons are proving devastatingly effective. Open a channel to the Indomitable, Vex ordered. On the human ship's bridge, Yuna received the incoming transmission. Captain, Admiral Vex wants to speak with you. Put him through, Heian said. The alien admiral's face appeared on screen. His species had features that humans found difficult to read, but the tone of his voice carried clear emotion. Captain Heian, I ordered you to stand down. You disobeyed direct commands from a superior officer. Yes, sir. I did, Heian replied calmly. You risked your ship and crew against impossible odds. Sir, you ignored centuries of established military doctrine and employed weapons considered primitive by galactic standards. Yes, sir. There was a pause. Then Admiral Vex made a sound that the translation software struggled to interpret. It might have been a laugh. "And you're winning. Captain, our fleet is regrouping. We're moving to support your position. Hold on for 3 more minutes. We'll be here, Admiral." The channel closed, and Han allowed himself a small smile. 3 minutes. The Indomitable just had to survive 3 more minutes. He looked at his crew, saw the determination on their faces, the way they worked together without needing orders. They were exhausted, running on adrenaline and sheer willpower, but they were holding. The railguns came back online. "Weapons ready, Captain," the weapons officer reported. "And let's make these last shots count. Fire at will." The 4th salvo launched, and the Valak's swarm finally began to break. They had never faced an enemy like this, one that turned their own advantages against them. The hive mind was confused, trying to adapt to tactics it did not understand. In that confusion, the perfect coordination that made them so deadly began to fail. Lieutenant Jiwan saw it happening from his fighter's cockpit. Valak's ships started moving independently, breaking formation, making mistakes. All wings, they're disorganized. Press the attack. The ghost fighters dove in, exploiting every opening, every moment of hesitation. They were down to 38 craft now, 12 lost to enemy fire, but those 38 fought like twice their number. And behind them, the Indomitable continued its relentless assault. Every shot calculated, every weapon employed with maximum efficiency. The Council fleet arrived like a wall of metal and fire. Dozens of warships, shields raised, weapons charged. They had seen what the humans accomplished alone, and they were done underestimating Earth. They fell into formation around the Indomitable, not as leaders and followers, but as equals in battle. The Valak's swarm, caught between the regrouped Council fleet and the devastating human tactics, made a decision that sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in 200 years of conquest, the Hive ordered a retreat. The Valak's swarm fled. Their bioships, those that could still move, turned away from the battlefield and accelerated into the void. They left behind thousands of their dead, debris fields that would drift through space for centuries. The Hive. Mine had calculated the odds and made a choice that survival experts across the galaxy thought impossible. The Valaks had learned fear. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Han watched them go. His ship was battered, scarred with weapon impacts and near misses. 3 of the railgun batteries were destroyed. The port shield generator was offline. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12 required emergency containment, but they were alive and they were victorious. "Ceasefire," Hune ordered. His voice was hoarse from shouting commands over the chaos of battle. "Recall all fighters. Get me damage reports from all sections." Commander Nari moved from station to station, coordinating the post-battle procedures. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder where a console explosion had sent debris flying. A medical tech had bandaged the cut, but she had refused to leave the bridge. Now she compiled the information Han needed. "Casualties are lighter than expected, Captain. 27 dead, 63 wounded. Most of the wounded are minor injuries. Sora has everything under control in medical. 27 dead." Yang closed his eyes for a moment. 27 people who had followed his orders, trusted his judgment, and would never see Earth again. The victory felt hollow with that weight on his shoulders. But he knew that without their sacrifice, thousands more would have died. It did not make it easier. "And the fighters?" he asked. 12 ghost units lost. Lieutenant Jiwan is bringing the rest home now." Hugh nodded. 12 pilots. 12 more families who would receive notifications that their loved ones had died in service to Earth. He would write letters to each family personally, though he knew no words would truly comfort them. It was part of command, the part they did not teach you in the academy. The fighter bay doors opened. The surviving ghost units flew home. They landed with varying degrees of grace, some perfect landings, others barely controlled crashes. Crews rushed to secure the fighters to help pilots out of their cockpits. Lieutenant Jiwan was the last to land. His fighter was scorched black, half the tail section simply gone. He climbed out slowly, legs shaking, and leaned against his craft for support. "That was insane, sir," Giwan said when Captain Heian arrived in the bay. Completely insane, and it worked. You did good work up there, Lieutenant. All of you did. The ones who didn't make it, they died buying time for the rest of us. They were heroes, sir. I know, and I'll make sure everyone knows it too. In the medical bay, Sora worked through her exhaustion. She had been operating for 4 hours straight, moving from patient to patient, making decisions about who needed immediate surgery and who could wait. Human, alien, it did not matter. They were all just people who needed help. Her staff followed her example, pushing through their own fatigue to save lives. An alien with 6 limbs lay on one of the beds. His species was one Sora had never treated before, but anatomy was anatomy once you understood the basics. She sealed the internal bleeding, repaired the damaged organs, and stabilized his condition. When he awoke, his eyes focused on her. Human doctor, you saved me. Why? Because that's what doctors do, Sora replied, already moving to the next patient. Engineering was a controlled chaos. Tay moved through the damaged sections with his teams, assessing what could be repaired immediately and what would need dock time. The railguns were his main concern. They had exceeded every safety specification, operated beyond their design limits, and somehow held together. Now they needed extensive repairs. We're looking at 6 days minimum to get the port railguns operational again, Tay reported to the bridge. The starboard guns can be fixed in 3 days if we cannibalize parts from non-essential systems. Shield generators will take 2 weeks. And Captain, we're lucky we're still breathing. Half these systems should have failed completely. But they didn't fail, Hyun said. You made sure of that. I just made the modifications, sir. The ship and crew did the rest. Admiral Vex's flagship came alongside the Indomitable. The massive vessel dwarfed the human ship, a reminder of the technological gap that still existed. But now that gap felt less important. A channel opened, and the Admiral's face appeared on every screen throughout the Indomitable. Captain Heian, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request permission to come aboard your vessel. It was unprecedented. Council admirals did not visit smaller ships. They summoned captains to them. The request was more than protocol. It was respect. Ewan straightened his uniform, very aware of how dirty and damaged it was. Permission granted, Admiral. We'll prepare to receive you. 20 minutes later, Admiral Vex walked through the corridors of the Indomitable. His security detail followed, along with several council observers who documented everything. The Admiral's species stood 7 feet tall, with crystalline features that reflected light in strange patterns. He moved with dignity despite the damage visible throughout the ship. They met in the Indomitable's briefing room. It was small by council standards, cramped even. Hyun stood with his senior officers. Commander Nari, Lieutenant G1, Engineer Tay, Medical Officer Sora, and Communications Officer Yuna. They represented humanity, and they stood tall, despite their exhaustion. Captain Heian, Admiral Vex began. You disobeyed my direct orders. Yes, sir, I did. You employed tactics that every military academy in the Council teaches as obsolete and ineffective. Sir, you risked your ship and crew for people who had treated you as inferiors and relegated you to the sidelines. Yes, sir. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He lowered his head, a gesture of respect in his culture. And you've saved over 15,000 lives by doing so. You changed the course of a battle we were losing. You made the Valak swarm retreat for the first time in 2 centuries. Captain, Earth may be new to the galactic community, but today you proved that humanity belongs here. He approached Heian and placed something in his hand. It was a medal, the Council's highest military honor. This is awarded for exceptional courage and tactical brilliance in the face of impossible odds. You are the first human to receive it. Heian looked at the medal, then at his crew. Sir, I didn't do this alone. Every person on this ship earned this. Then ensure they all receive recognition. But you made the choice to engage. You accepted the responsibility of command and the consequences that came with it. That requires a special kind of courage. The Admiral turned to address all the officers present. The Council is convening an emergency session. Humanity's status will be elevated to full military partnership. Captain Heian, You are promoted to Admiral and given command of a joint task force. Commander Nari, you are requested to establish a new training program at the Council Military Academy. Engineer Tay, your modifications will be studied and implemented across the fleet. Medical Officer Sora, you will establish humanitarian protocols for combat operations. Each officer stood a little straighter as they were recognized. These were people who had done their jobs, followed their training, and trusted their instincts. Now the galaxy was acknowledging them. There is one more thing, Admiral Vex said. He pulled up a holographic display showing the battle from multiple angles, captured by Council sensors. This recording has been transmitted to every world in the Council. Every civilization is watching what happened here. They are watching humanity fight beside us as equals. You have changed the galaxy's perception of Earth in a single day. Hyun watched the recording play. He saw the indomitable charge into impossible odds. Saw the ghost fighters weave through enemy formations. Saw the railgun salvos tear through Valak shields. It looked different from the outside, more heroic somehow. From the bridge it had felt desperate, a series of gambles that could have gone wrong at any moment. Admiral Vexion said, "We did what anyone would have done in our position." "No, Captain. Most would have followed orders and watched from safety. You chose differently. That makes all the difference." The briefing ended, and Admiral Vex departed with his entourage. The senior officers remained, looking at each other in silence. They had come to the battle as outsiders, barely tolerated members of the galactic community. They were leaving as heroes, their names known across dozens of worlds. 3 days after the battle, the Indomitable floated in formation with the Council fleet. Repair crews from a dozen different species worked on the damaged sections. Sharing technology and techniques that had been kept separate before, the barrier between humanity and the galactic community was not gone. But it had become something you could step across rather than a wall too high to climb. Admiral Hayan, still adjusting to his new rank, stood in his quarters, looking at Earth through the viewport. Home was 43 light-years away, a blue and white marble, invisible to the naked eye at this distance. But he knew it was there, knew that people on Earth were hearing about the battle. Reading the reports, seeing humanity take its place among the stars, a message arrived from Earth's command. Hyun read it twice, then smiled. It was short, direct, and very human in its tone. "Well done, Admiral. The galaxy knows now. We don't ask for permission. We earn our place. Earth is proud. Come home when you can." There was a knock at his door. Commander Nari entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee, not the synthetic stuff from the ship's dispensers. "Thought you might need this, sir." One of the Council supply ships had some. Apparently word got out that humans prefer certain beverages. Hyun accepted the cup gratefully. Earth coffee in the middle of alien space. "The galaxy is changing." "Changed it," Nari said. She sat down without asking, a familiarity that came from serving together through life and death. "I've been reviewing the tactical data. We destroyed or disabled 4,200 Valak ships. Our casualty rate was less than 1%. By any measure, it was a decisive victory. 27 people died, Nari. 12 more pilots. I can name every one of them, I know. But because of them, 15,000 others lived. That's what command means. Making decisions that cost something but save more. You know that." Hyun was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "The Council is convening tomorrow. They want both of us there. Full ceremony, apparently." "Political theater," Nari said. "They need to show everyone that they're taking humanity seriously now. We're the new heroes, the underdogs who became champions. Give it 6 months, and they'll probably make a documentary." 6 months? Try 6 days. Yuna showed me the extranet. There are already 3 unauthorized documentaries, 2 dramatized versions, and something called a reaction video that I don't fully understand. They laughed together. The kind of laugh that comes after extreme stress. When you survive something that should have killed you. Then Nari's expression became serious. "Sir, this new position they're offering me? Training officer at the Council Military Academy. It means leaving the Indomitable. Leaving the crew? Right. I know, and you should take it. What we did here, the tactics that worked, they need to be taught. The Council has been fighting the same way for centuries. They need someone to show them different approaches. That's you. What about Lieutenant Jiwan's position? Leading the integrated fighter wing? He's perfect for it. Young enough to relate to the newer pilots, experienced enough to teach them. Plus, he has that attitude that the Council needs to see. Respectful, but not intimidated. Nari stood to leave, then paused at the door. Admiral, what we did out there. It was more than just a battle. We proved something. That being human means something in this galaxy. That our way of doing things has value. Get some rest, Commander. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Down in engineering, Tay was giving a tour to a group of Council engineers. They examined the railgun systems with fascination, asking questions about tolerances and cooling rates and power consumption. What had been dismissed as primitive was now the focus of intense study. The key is not trying to make it complicated, Tay explained, showing them the modified targeting systems. The Council tried to evolve weapons beyond physical projectiles. But sometimes the simple solution is the best one. Mass, velocity, impact. Physics doesn't care how advanced your civilization is. One of the alien engineers, a being that looked like it was made of living metal, ran calculations on a portable computer. The energy efficiency is remarkable. Our plasma cannons require enormous power plants. These railguns use a fraction of that energy and deliver comparable results. Different tools for different jobs, Tay said. We're not saying energy weapons are bad. We're saying maybe having both options makes you stronger. In the medical bay, Sora had finished her shift but remained behind, checking on the patients one more time. The alien with 6 limbs was sitting up now, eating something from a bowl. He saw her and waved one of his limbs in greeting. Human doctor, I wanted to thank you properly. You could have focused on your own species, but you treated everyone equally. Medicine doesn't see species, Sora said. Just patients who need help. My civilization has been part of the Council for 300 years. We thought we understood how things worked. Then you humans arrived and showed us that there are other ways to think, other ways to care. He paused. I am a teacher at the Medical Institute on my homeworld. Would you come and speak to my students? They should hear from someone who treats healing as universal.
Oh, no.
Sora smiled. I'd be honored. Lieutenant Jiwan sat in the pilot's lounge with his surviving squadron. They were drinking, telling stories, doing what soldiers do after a battle. Mourning the dead by celebrating the living. Someone had smuggled alcohol aboard, and nobody was asking questions about where it came from. Ghost 4 here thought he could outrun 6 Valak ships at once, one pilot was saying. Ended up leading them straight into Ghost 9's firing solution. 9 took out all 6 with 1 missile spread. Luck, Ghost 9 protested. Pure luck. Luck is being good and in the right place, Guan said. He raised his glass. To the 12 who didn't make it back, they were the best of us. We're only here because they bought us time. Everyone raised their glasses in silence. The moment stretched, heavy with memory. Then someone started telling another story, and the mood lifted again. They would mourn, but they would also live. That was the promise they made to the ones who died. The next day, the Council convened in a massive chamber aboard the central station. Representatives from 12 civilizations gathered, along with observers from dozens more. Admiral Hoon stood before them in his dress uniform, newly made to accommodate his rank. Beside him stood his senior officers, each wearing their own new insignia. The Council speaker, an ancient being whose species had been traveling the stars for millennia, addressed the assembly. We gather to acknowledge an event that will be remembered for generations. The Battle of Hellion Nebula showed us that power and experience are not the only measures of worth. Humanity, young as they are, demonstrated courage and innovation that saved thousands of lives and turned the tide against the Valak swarm. The speaker approached Admiral Hin. You are awarded the Star of Unity, the highest honor the Council can bestow. Your crew will each receive the Medal of Valor. Earth is granted full military partnership, equal status in all Council operations, and a seat on the Military Strategic Council. Furthermore, human combat doctrine will be integrated into council training programs. Yoon accepted the medal, a beautiful thing that glowed with its own light. Speaker, on behalf of humanity, I accept these honors. But I want to be clear. We didn't fight for recognition. We fought because it was right. Because people needed help. That's what Earth stands for. And that, the speaker said, is why you have earned your place among us. The ceremony continued for another hour, with speeches and presentations and diplomatic formalities, but Hyen's mind was elsewhere. He thought about the crew of the Indomitable, working to repair their ship. About the pilots who would never fly home. About Earth, waiting 43 light-years away for their champions to return. When the ceremony finally ended, Hyun found himself on an observation deck overlooking the station's vast interior. Ships from across the galaxy docked here, a crossroads of civilizations. Once humanity had been locked to a single planet dreaming of the stars, now they were here, proven equals in a community that spanned light years. Engineer Tae found him there. Admiral, thought you'd want to know. The repairs are ahead of schedule. Council engineers are sharing techniques that will have us space-worthy in 2 days instead of 6. Good. The crew has earned some leave time. Maybe a visit to one of the Council's recreational stations? Actually, sir, most of the crew wants to stay with the ship. They feel like they're part of something now. Part of history, Yoon nodded. That was humanity in a nutshell. Given the chance to rest, they chose to keep working. Given the chance to hide, they chose to fight. It was not always the smartest choice, but it was the right one. A communication came through from Earth, Hyen's family. His sister and her children appeared on a small holographic display. They were crying and laughing at the same time, proud and scared and happy all at once. We saw the recordings, his sister said. Everyone on Earth saw them. You're a hero, big brother. Come home safe, Hyun promised. Tell everyone I'll be home soon. He closed the channel and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valak swarm was licking its wounds, learning from its defeat. They would come back eventually, stronger and more dangerous. But next time humanity would be ready. Next time, they would not be alone.